My point is too, I think, James, that as a leader, our role changes and we have to be ready to adapt to that as a franchisor.
Well, it's a different skill set, right? But like the great thing for me is that all business skills are learnable. Leadership is a learnable skill. You can learn. There's a lot of great books have been written on that, great teachers about that topic. But you have to understand some basic principles of that. John Maxwell, he's written a lot of books on leadership, fantastic author. He has a new book out right now called High Road Leadership, which is fantastic. It just came out about a month ago. It's really all about how to lead in a culture that divides. And it's a fantastic look at what the attributes need to be from a franchisor, from a perspective of someone who's leading, as well as what kind of people you want to have come in that have already some of those capabilities and resources themselves to be accountable, to be, to basically lead by example, those kinds of things. So I think it's just leadership is it's really influence. That's what John Maxwell says. Leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. Your ability to influence other people, whether that's influencing your first sale, hiring people that can actually go out there and sell your product or service for you, having people on the operations side who can take care of that customer once they come in, so they want to come back and buy from you again and again. Mm-hmm. But you have to be able to lead and teach people and inspire them to help them know how to be a better person, a better leader yourself.
Yeah.
So that might be something you want to consider if you're listening to this, that, hey, you should be thinking about what kind of leadership resources or tools am I reading and reflecting on to become a better leader myself. That's really critical that you're doing that. You constantly are reading and thinking about what's the next step. I talk about this principle a lot in my book, Franchise Growth Strategies. In chapter 2, I talk about how you should have an idea day once a month, or at least once a quarter at the very least. But what an idea day is a time for you to kind of get away from the business and think about the direction you're heading. Are you on the right path? Are you doing the things that are keeping you busy, but are not going to help you get to your end goal? Or are you on the right trajectory? That's kind of what you're really thinking about and analyzing. And part of that is leadership. Am I doing the right things to be a great leader, or do I need to hire more people? I know you talk about that in your book too, when you were kind of, before you hired your chief operational officer, you kind of growing, expanding your business, you take on a lot more sometimes than you're able to do yourself. And I think a great characteristic of great leadership is the ability to say, this is too much for me alone. I need to hire people to help me out that are stronger than me in this area. They can actually help me grow in this area. And great leaders have the ability to surround themselves with excellent people and accomplish great things together, a lot more than you could if you try to do it all on yourself. And I think sometimes that's just what's the right set of skills you need to learn from doing that. But I have an idea notebook, for example, that I keep around for me, that I write different things in. And so when I have my idea day, I take that book with me, and I also have a little folder that I have with articles I've stuck in there. And there's basically 7 different segments of that book that I kind of look at. The first page and the last page of that book are what's called the implementation list. What am I going to do next? That's what you have to be as a leader, is make decisions and actually get things done. So that's a key thing you want to look at there. The second tab I have in that book is advertising that works. What's actually working to get people drawn to you to want to do business for you? So if I look at something, if I see a commercial or I see an ad or I see something in franchising and it inspires or motivates me, I want to pay attention to what's behind that, what's causing me to want to take action on that. A great leader is the ability to look at other people and say, that's a great thing, I'm going to adopt that or use that myself, or that's not a good thing, I'm not going to do that in my business. So that's the third tab is, I think, is headlines at work. When you see an ad or you see something that's drawing people into their businesses, whether it's a competitor, competing franchise, or another franchise in a completely different industry than yours, what are things that they're saying to draw people into their funnel, into their looking at what they're doing? And so just study that. And I'm always jotting that down in my little book. Here's a headline that moves me, that makes me want to say, hey, I should pay more attention to this. The fourth category is that of powerful stories that move me. When you're a leader, you have to be able to tell great stories to inspire people. So if you have a whole library of stories you can pull from, so reminds me of this situation, I'm going to share this with people more because it helps them understand better how to do that. I don't know if you want to talk about the rest of the things in the book, but I'll just give you one example for me of great leadership is that of, most people are familiar with the guy who broke the 4-minute mile, Roger Bannister. He broke the 4-minute mile in 4 minutes in 1954, May of 1954. But a lot of people don't know how he actually did it. What he did is he actually hired 2 guys to be what are called pacers. The first guy was a guy named John Brasher, or his name was Chris Brasher, I'm sorry. And then the second guy was a guy named Chris Chataway. And those guys, they ran 2 laps with him. So the first guy, Chris Brasher, would run faster than he could actually do himself, and his job was to keep up with that guy. Then when Chris Brasher started to get tired, then Chris Chataway would run him for the last 2 laps, and he would run faster than Roger Bannister's normal pace was. So he had to keep up with him.
Wow.
In the last 200 yards, then he actually picked up the pace and pushed through that boundary and was able to break the 4-minute mile at 3:59 and some seconds there. But the point, what I was saying is that story is inspiring because it shows you need to surround yourself with people who are great pacers, people who can actually help push you farther than you can go on your own, and And that's really, I think, what leadership is surround yourself with pacers and recognize here's the problem, here's what I need to do, and here's how I need to get that put together. So those inspiring stories are so important for leadership, but inspire people to know what to do and how to operate based on those principles out too. The fifth tab I have in my idea book is list of businesses to pay attention to. So it's not just in franchising, look at all the other businesses out there in your industry. What are people doing that's really setting them apart? What's causing them to be successful with their business? So reading a lot about people, their businesses. You can read a lot about like on investors.com. There's a great little section on business and profiles. You can learn what people are doing, and you get a lot of ideas from just letting what people in completely unrelated industries are doing to solve business problems they're having in their area. So that's a great thing to kind of look at as well. Sixth thing is the list of ideas of things you could do for other people. Maybe that's someone that you think about, someone you could help. I think about Tom's, the guy who started Tom's, Blake Mykowski. He started this company where he basically gave one pair of shoes away to somebody else when people would buy a pair of shoes.
Oh, yeah.
And he did that idea for shoes. He did it for eyewear. And they gave away lots and lots of hundreds of millions of pairs of shoes and eyeglasses to people that didn't have those resources. Now they kind of changed their model a little bit. So they're kind of doing about a third of all their profits go into these different charities or different causes to support. But that idea of one for one is so powerful that people think about that idea and say, how could I use that? So you could make a list of, here's all the things I'm going to do for myself, for my clients, for my franchisees, for my franchisors. What can I do? That might, as an emerging franchisor, that'd be a good list of who are my top franchisees? What can I do for them? What can I give to them? My middle franchisees, my ones that maybe struggling, but what can I do for them or help them with? And if you think about that list often, it gives you the ideas to put on your implementation list. You can actually reach out to them, call them and say, hey, I want to reach out to you and see how I can help you and support you and what you're doing in your business. So grateful to have you be a part of our franchise. And then the last tab I have in the book is just quotes that inspire me. So I have a quote book I carry around with me all the time. I have a little book that like this, actually the book I have right here, and I have quotes in there. So when I'm reading a lot, I'll just jot a little thing down here. I have a little note card in here that I can pull out and write some ideas on. And then that goes into my thinking about my priorities and what I want to do as I kind of build my business as well. But that's a key thing, is to have an idea book or someplace you can kind of reference, go back to it again and again to help you know what to do to be a better leader. And an idea book or an idea day is a great way to implement leadership strategies and help you be more successful in your business.
Yeah, gosh, it's hard to unpack everything you just said because there's so much gold in what you just shared, James. I think from a founder's perspective, one of the key ways of making this all happen, first of all, is of course setting real time aside that you're going to do these things and get yourself out of the business, right? And stop working in the business. Right. And then the other part of that is because what you're really referring to is this is all about personal growth and personal development. That's what I'm hearing again and again. So Getting out of the office, getting out of the house, going to a personal development conference or seminar or somewhere where you're changing your environment, get out of the usual environment and get yourself into a community, whether it's, like for me, it was going to Tony Robbins events, and most of my major breakthroughs happened at a Tony event. And maybe it wasn't not necessarily just because of Tony, as amazing as he is and how much of an influence he's had on my life. The fact is that I was getting out of the office to create some of these things because I wasn't like dealing with the obligation or dealing with, meetings and calls, and I made time for doing that by getting out of the office. I think that's so critical for people, especially starting out. Like for anybody that says, I don't have time to do it, when you agree, you don't have time not to do it. This is so important.
Yeah, I was going to say that you have to schedule that time.
Yeah.
And a lot of it, when you first started franchising, you're traveling a lot to go to conferences and things like that. So maybe book a day before or a day after, and you think about all the things you can implement from what you learned at that conference or what you're doing there. When I do idea days, a lot of times I actually go to a library, like a public library or something like that. I leave my phone in the car. No one knows where I'm at. And then I can actually get things done and work just in a block of time. So I have to get this completed before I can leave for lunch, or I have to get this done before I can come home for dinner. And you have those hours that you're blocked off and no one can get to interrupt you. And you have to take time to reflect and think about where you're going in your business and to be able to execute on a high level with leadership. That's a key component of that. But you have to have a way to organize your information you're studying and learning, and then you have to have a way to implement that and put it in process in your business.
Thank you for tuning into the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. For additional insights, guest applications, and to stay connected, visit us at efbpodcast.com. The Emerging Franchise Brands podcast is for entertainment purposes only, and the views expressed do not necessarily represent those of Emerging Franchise Brands, its host Frank Fumey, or Emerging Franchise Group LLC. Any discussed franchise or investment opportunity requires thorough investigation, obtaining proper disclosure documents, and expert consultation before making any investment decisions. The podcast and its host do not offer professional advice or endorsements, and they hold no responsibility for actions, representations, accuracy, or consequential damages related to the podcast content.